Hello booktubing world. It is I, Capri Nicole, and I'm back with another video. You know, I love doing vlogs, but it's just something about a sit down video where you can like prep everything, get dressed. It's kind of like filming a TV show and everything's just set up perfectly. Today I'm going to be doing one of my favorite videos. Honestly, all the videos at the end of the year are like my favorite. It's like a booktube staple, honestly. So we're going to be talking about my favorite books of the year, or my best book of 2022. I had 10, but there was like 2 honorable mentions I wanted to add, so we actually have 12. So I have 12 books to talk about. I'm timing myself. I'm hoping that I don't talk too much, but whenever I'm passionate about something, whether it's something that I love or something that I hate, I tend to go on a bit of a rampage. We're going to be talking about the 12 books that are my favorite. I, of course, have my notebook. I feel like I'm one of the only booktubers that buy notebooks and like actually uses them from start to finish. Like, we're coming towards the end of this creative notebook that I have here, but the order that I'm going to be doing these books is the first section will be middle grade and YA books. The second section will be nonfiction. Third section will be fantasy and fantasy romance, and the fourth section will be romance, erotica, and all that in a big bubble. So let's get into the video. Okay, so most of these books I have physically, but I'm just gonna put up a picture of them because nobody got time. I don't want to take all this stuff out and then have to put it back later. No one wants to do that. So the first book that I have on my list is Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl, and this book follows a teenager who is a PK. So she's basically a pastor's kid. Her father is a pastor and her parents run a very strict household, but she's been in a relationship with her boyfriend for I think 2 years, and they're kind of trying to take things to the next level. She's like approaching young adulthood, you know, she's still a teenager, but she's like, you know, trying to figure out sex and stuff like that, and she can't really turn to her parents for help, so she doesn't really know who to turn to. Her sister is estranged, so she isn't there either, and she's kind of just like left on this island by herself, and her boyfriend isn't really pressuring her into having sex, but he's kind of like putting the pressure on her, so she's not really sure how to approach it. She ends up being friends with 2 people that she least expected, and they help her become comfortable with her body and are very sex positive, helpful friends. And I just really love this book. When it comes to like middle grade and young adult books, I don't think I'll ever get tired of reading them, because even though it's from the perspective of like someone that's 17, 18, 16, whatever, it's just something so refreshing about them becoming themselves and being comfortable with who they are. And in this book, my favorite part of it was honestly the friendship. I feel like our main character was someone who was very uptight, who was like by the book, follow the rules, and was like scared to go outside of the box. But her befriending 2 people that were structured in what they were and who they were, but also knew how to have fun, and kind of like getting her out of her getting her out of her comfort zone in a way. And then like the little romance that was in this was nice as well. I love the conversations around like family dynamics and religion and like judging people without really knowing who they are. She did that with both of the people that she ended up being friends with in this book, and it was very interesting to see the development of these characters and getting to know all 3 of them. It just was like a book of friendship, like a book of friendship and a coming of age book, and I just loved it. Like, it was just good. Like, there were so many things I tabbed in it, so many good quotes. Like, it just gave me the warm and fuzzies, but I just was rooting for the main character, and it was just nice to see her grow as a person and be more comfortable with who she was. So the next book that I have on my list is Onyeka, and this book was a middle grade book, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I listened to this on audiobook, and basically follows this main character who is, I think she's in, I don't know what grade she's in. I'm gonna say middle grade character, who is again very sheltered, someone who follows all the rules, listens to her mother, does what she's supposed to do, and she ends up going to her best friend's pool party, and her friend ends up almost drowning. She goes to help her, and she comes to find out that she has like superpowers slash like magical abilities, but it's through her hair. And then she finds out who her father is, because her mother has to come clean about like her lineage and who she is and who her father is. It just gives Percy Jackson but black girl magic, and I loved it so much. She ends up going to this school that has other children that are there who have superpowers slash magical abilities, and we get to follow along with her as she comes into this new world and comes into understanding her powers. The plot was really good. The friendships was like really pure, but also like, I don't want to say backstabby, but like you couldn't trust everyone. And I felt like a lot of the characters in this book were like hot and cold. I like books that have black girl main characters that are not nice, because like every character in books aren't going to be like super nice, super happy, super whatever. I don't want to say they're grumpy, but like when you get to know them, you get to see more about them. And I feel like there was a few characters like that in this book, and it just was so precious. I love the cover. I'm really excited for the second one. The plot really delivered. Like if you want something that's like action packed, is diverse, and is like refreshing, and kind of leans into like mythology-ish, you know, something like that, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed the audiobook. I loved it. I want the physical book so bad, and this is definitely one of the books that I'm going to add to like my children's TBR, like when I have kids. I'm like slowly building their book collection, even though they're not even here yet, but this is definitely one of the books that I want to add, and I just love it. Like I just love seeing like black girl magic, but like young black girls. It's just so cute. Okay, so the next book that I have, or the next section that I have, is nonfiction. I only have one book for this section. I listened to this book as well on audiobook, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was narrated by the author, and this basically is like a trap feminist book. Like I felt like I read a lot of feminist books this year, but they all were like based in like the perspective of black women, and I feel like some black feminists are very inclusive as far as like their journey, and other minorities, as far as transgender women, as far as other women of color. I feel like they're very inclusive in that, and it doesn't feel mainstream. I just love this because it felt like a shout out to like all the hood girls and all the like trap queens that are like, well, not trap queens, I don't want to trap not trap queens, but like all the trap girls, like all the girls from the hood or that grew up in the hood. It just felt like a love note to them, and it just was like unapologetic, very honest, very real. I love the cover, and there were parts of the book that like referenced music, and I just felt like she touched on a lot of things in the black community that touchy subjects or topics that people kind of shy away from, but I really appreciated like her being honest. She talked a lot about sex work, she talked a lot about body positivity. Just in general, I enjoyed it because it felt very honest. Like it wasn't like sugar coated. She was very real. I feel like a lot of the black feminist books I read this year were very honest with their own journey as well, adding it into the narrative, and it kind of felt more personable. So if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. Okay, so the next section we're going to cover is fantasy and fantasy romance, and I'm just going to kick it off with my girl Kimberly Lemming. Like Kimberly Lemming, I read 3 of her books back to back on Kindle, and like immediately after I had to buy them physically because I was just like highlighting, annotating everything. I was spooning, I was just kicking my feet, giggling. Like it just was a good time. I loved every second of this book, all of the books, honestly. So basically, Kimberly Lemming's world of the books that I read is a series called The Mead Mishaps, and this is basically like, I don't want to say low stakes, but like medium stake fantasy romance, where there is this world of people that are separated from the world of demons, which is just like shapeshifters, dragons, werewolves, stuff like that. There's a barrier that separates them, and there's a queen that rules their world, and they find out that the queen is a flim-flammer, a shim-shammer. She's been lying to them. They end up taking her down, and their worlds come together, and as the worlds come together and truths unfold, you get to know more about the characters, the demons, and you get to know more about the people, and their worlds kind of like collide. But the first book follows our main character and a dragon shapeshifter, and then the second book follows another main character and a werewolf shapeshifter. The novella is following a fox shapeshifter. So it's basically all like that, and they all end up falling in love, and it's just very cute. It's very cute. It's very steamy. The sex scenes were phenomenal. Like, I'm not gonna lie, they were really good, and I just felt like the love interests were just like spoiling the shit out of the female main characters, and I just love seeing black girls being spoiled. especially romantically. I live for it. Can't wait to reread it and annotate my copies physically. I highly recommend it. If you're ever gonna say a book is on brand for me, it will definitely be Kimberly Lemming. Like, if you don't really like quirky characters, I would kind of like be wary of that. It just was fun. I felt like I was looking for like a fantasy book that wasn't like built in trauma, and that's when I found her book, so it just made me love them more. And I've had a few people come to me and say, oh, I read Kimberly Lemming's books because of you, and I love them. So I'm really happy to hear that. If you take any recommendations from my channel, please take Kimberly Lemming's. Take the Kimberly Lemming recommendations, because I highly recommend it. They're short, they're fun, and they're just cute. Okay, they're just cute. The next book that I have to talk about is Rage of Dragons, and this book I love so much. I actually read it in this video up here, which you guys can check out if you want to. But it basically follows our main character, who is in, everything's based off of like a hierarchy, and they have to go through this academy. It's also based off of class. It's very hard to explain. It follows our main character, who was done very dirty, and the entire book is just him out for revenge. He is willing to do whatever it takes to be the strongest, most powerful person in order to get revenge from something that was done to him. And so we're basically following him, and the entire book you just want to shake him, because he's one of those main characters that are very hard-headed, that do things that do not make sense, that are dangerous, but like you're low-key rooting for him. I was very confused in the beginning of this book, because they really just throw you into the world and you have to figure it out. But there is a glossary in the back, so flipping back and forth between the glossary and getting more comfortable with Tao as a character, I just loved it. I ate it up. I'm waiting for him to release a publishing date for book 3 before I start the second book, but I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Like, I'm really just trying to read all of these books, but it is a 3-book series. I highly recommend it. If you can deal with hard-headed main characters, I definitely recommend it. And huge world building, and just, it was very unique to me, and very bloody, very gory, very vengeance filled, just amazing. Like, I loved it. Wish I could read it again for the first time. So the next book that I have is Bones to the Wind, and this book is also hard to explain. I feel like all the fantasy books are kind of hard to explain, but it basically follows the main character. Her name is Raja, and it's set in like this desert land. Like the atmosphere is very desert filled, and they have wind ships, and the magical system and the powers is set through bones. And basically they go through this academy where once they reach like their senior year, quote unquote, once they reach their senior year, they kind of have to go on this quest. They track down a creature and then they have to bring it back. They're all put out into the desert. They have to figure out who their group is going to be. They come together on this wind ship, and then they track down a creature and bring it back. Now, Raja is someone who is very hard-headed, someone who is very showy, who has no friends because she is just over the top and extra, but I live for it. And she decides that she wants to bring back a dragon, and no one wants to do this with her, so she ends up deciding to do this by herself. And she teams up with like the underdog of their class, and it just goes from there. And it has romance in it as well. I just thought it was very unique. I've never read anything like this, and the characters really jumped off the page. Raja was just like, she's up there with Manan. Manan is one of my favorite characters out of any of the books that I've ever read, and she's up there with Manan. Like, she has the attitude, she does not give a shit. She risks her life and other people's lives, and in the end it kind of always works out for her, and sometimes it does not, which is also something I enjoy. This author really knew how to like pull the plug and take those risks, and everything wasn't just always hunky-dory. So I really enjoyed that aspect as well. I felt like the politics in this book was really well done. I'm gonna be reading this book on Erin's channel, I think in May. So we're going to be reading the duology May next year. So if you want to read along with us, you can. I've already read it, so I'm going to be rereading it, and I'm really excited to. This is from an indie author, but the covers eat down. The second cover eats down. I just thinking about it, I just love it so much. And as you can see, I know I said I wasn't going to pull it out, but as you can see, I tabbed this book heavy. Like, I don't think I've ever tabbed a book this much, ever. And for good reason. For good reason. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay, and the last book that I have in the fantasy section is Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. I also read this in a vlog, which I will link up here if you guys want to check it out. And it follows this setting that is just so unique. Fantasy books are just my favorite because in the world they're always just so unique. And this world is set and follows dream magic. Magical abilities and stuff like that are based off of like dreams, and there's different casts of dream. There's like dream blood, there's dream seed. I don't know how to explain this book. I feel like anytime it comes to like N.K. Jemisin, it's so hard to explain her books, but like I guess you could say they're like priests and they control like the dream magical abilities. And if someone is like corrupt or about to die, they have the ability to basically put them to sleep and quote unquote kill them. They're like peaceful assassins, if you will. If they take someone's life that isn't justified, it can become like very addictive to do this and take this person's dream blood, quote unquote, and you turn into a monster essentially. And there is also someone who was originally a part of this group and has now essentially turned into one of these monsters. Talking about crazy ass characters, this book is top of the list. Like someone that is like just out of control, someone that doesn't care who they have to sacrifice in order to get to the top. This just gives. The stakes were high. You could feel the characters like obsession over these practices and the tug of war of like right and wrong and who's justified and who isn't. It just was good. Like overall it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I love the characters. I have the second book, but I don't want to read it yet because I don't want I don't want it to end. I think it's a duology. I don't want to finish it. I just want to just stay with book one forever, but I highly recommend it. Okay, and the final section is the romance and the erotica section. So I have 5 books for this section, and we're gonna kick it off with one of my favorites. Honestly, this is one of my favorite books of the year, and it is Honey and Spice. This book made me cry. I listened to it on audiobook, which I highly recommend because it's like mixed media in there, and it basically follows the main character who is like a radio personality for college girls, and she basically gives them advice on like how to avoid playboys and how to avoid being mistreated by the boys on campus. And the other main character, who is a love interest, is somebody who's new to the school and who is pursuing film. They basically agreed to fake date in order to do like a creative project of like finding out why people fall in love, why people decide to be in relationships, people are willing to sacrifice for love. So they have really good chemistry, so they kind of setting themselves up. Honestly, like I don't know what they thought was gonna happen. This book was so fun. It took me a little bit to click with the main character because she felt a little bit insufferable, and I was like, sister, let up. But she was another one of those characters, which is like, it seems to be a pattern of something that I really enjoy, of a female main character that's a little bit uptight, and then her love interest, it helps her loosen up a little bit and change in small ways but still be herself. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like he was just so gentle with her, but they both were like kind of assholes. They weren't grumpy, but I feel like they both were like very sarcastic, had this like dry humor banter together, and the chemistry was just like top tier. This author is like a new author. I think this is her second book that she's written. I've read both of her books, and something about the way that she writes, she has this poetic way of like randomly writing in the book. Like it'll just be like a regular book, you know, regular setting, regular romance book, and then all of a sudden she has this line where it's just like, damn, like it just feels like poetry, like Lonnie Taylor in a way, but like not so dreamy and flowery. It's just like very small parts of the books, like when she wants you to draw emotion or connect to those characters. I feel like she has a really good way of doing that. Very descriptive writing, very beautiful. And ending is what made me cry, because the more they went into this project, the more they got to know each other, the more they dived into like what love is and what relationships are, and it just was like so well done. I loved it. I love seeing two creative people fall in love. It just was really well done. I ate it up, and I think you should eat it up too. I really highly recommend this one. This is my favorite romance of the year, favorite book of the year, and yeah, she eats. Second book in this section that I have is Treat by Shay Sanders. Now, these are novellas. I read these during Halloween, the duology, Trick and Treat, And Treat basically follows this couple that has been together for a really long time. They have a kid. They're not married yet. The male main character is really vanilla. He's very simple. He doesn't like to do too much like crazy stuff. But the female main character is very adventurous. She likes to try different things. She tried to coax him into that, but saw that it was not something that he was comfortable with early on in their relationship. So she kind of like backs back. Like she just lets it go. She's like, hey, it is what it is. He's a good guy. I'm gonna let it ride. But she kind of tucked that side away of her into a little closet. But he's decided that she's like the love of his life and he really wants to try things with her. So they end up going to the sex club and it ensues from there. I think my favorite part of this book was like an established relationship and knowing each other and them having really good communication. And it was hot. Like, I ain't gonna lie, this book was hot as hell. And it was short, it was quick. But books that have main characters that have really good communication, especially romantically, I live for. Like, miscommunication, who is she? We don't want her anywhere near us. Like, the next one that I have, I feel like this is my baby. I feel like all the romance books are like my babies, but the next one that I have is by The Book, which I also read. I feel like all of these I read in vlogs, but I read this in a vlog as well, which I will put up here, where I was reading like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. And this was a Beauty and the Beast retelling that follows the main character who is working in publishing, and she kind of gets bored with her job after she's like super excited to get her foot in the door. She realizes that it's not all it's hyped up to be. There is a celebrity that her publishing house has been working with in order to get him to write his memoir or his life story, something like that. But he got his advance and he has not sent over no drafts. Like, he's literally just not responding to emails, not responding to phone calls. So she agrees to go over there and kind of like roughhouse him a little bit. But she kind of panics and runs up out of the house and ends up getting hurt. So she ends up getting stuck at the house. While she's there, she tries to get him to open up more and like delve through his past traumas and his difficulty with writing this book and why he's not comfortable with, you know, telling his story. And she does it in a way that I felt like was perfect. Like, she let him open up, but she didn't push him in a way that felt like overbearing. And just like their romance was like so well done. It was like a slow burn, but it was so precious. It is a closed door romance, so if that's not your thing, I'm just warning you now. But it's a closed door romance. It just felt so precious. It was very cute. They were big foodies, so they had a ton of snack times. My favorite part of the book, honestly, was like the last chapter. Something that the male main character did that just was like so pure. And I just love books with two black leads that are just like pure and precious and cute. There also was like, I don't want to say magical, but there also was like a hint of like possible magic in the book. Like, it felt like the house kind of had like an attitude of its own. There were like small things happening where it was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like small little hints. Like, it was very cute but very subtle. The show was not closed door, but you know, it is what it is. I didn't write the book, so hey. Next book that I have is Malavance by Smulgy. I'm not sure how to say this author's name, but Smulgy. This was my first dark romance book, and I'm glad that I read one by a black author, just saying. Really enjoyed it. It basically is like a fantasy romance book, and it follows the main character who is a fairy, and she's a princess, but she's very mistreated, like Cinderella-esque, her family, and she struggles with that. And certain things ensue in the castle. I don't want to spoil it. The best part is like not knowing what happens, but like her love interests are two men that are shapeshifters. One shapeshifts into a bear and the other shapeshifts into a lion. The politics in this land is basically like the fairies are top of the hierarchy, then there's the elves, and then the shapeshifters are kind of like very mistreated. So this book is like heavy in politics and heavy in revenge, also very dark. Like, if you don't like dark romance, do not read this book. Like, but if you are a dark romance girly, I highly recommend it because it gets dark. It's very dark, it's very gruesome, but I had a great time. I had a great time reading this, I ain't gonna lie. I feel like there was like huge character development, and just like the sex scenes were great. Her sex scenes never disappoint. This is the second book that I read by her. Cover is ugly as hell, but I did order it, so what can I say? it definitely is like near and dear to my heart because it's my first dark romance. But I don't know, like I said in my other video, Cruel Prince could never. Like, this is the ultimate dark romance, reverse harem, like black girl being spoiled. Like, it is like a development of respect between these characters. The politics was really good. Everybody was getting slaughtered. I just like seeing when authors don't care about who they kill. Like, that just does it, because it just will draw emotion out of you when you get connected to a character and then it's just like, no, that character is about to die. So yeah, wrap it up. It's a bit of a thickum, you know, it's like 700 pages, but still really good. So if you're into reverse harems and you're into dark romance, this is the book for you. The final book that I have as book of 2022 is Silver Lining, which is also a indie published book, and this one follows the main character who ends up going on a singles cruise and ends up running into her old professor. She went to college and this was the guy who was teaching her class. She always had a crush on him, but he never crossed that line. I think that was one of my favorite parts of this book, was the fact that he was very upfront and serious about like not crossing that line. He was like, I was never attracted to you when you were my student. Like, that was not, you know what I'm saying, like that was a very hard no for him. But once, this is like 10 years later, so she's like in her 30s, he's in his like late 40s, they both end up on the single cruise, and you know, romance embarks. Like, this one was very steamy. That aquarium scene was just like top tier. The chemistry between these characters was phenomenal. There was drama, there was theatrics. But it was short and it was good, and it was just so good. I want to say on this one because it is like short, but if you like cruise setting romances, it's a very fast-paced book, but I felt like the pacing was really well done. Like, I keep asking people to read this damn book because it just was good. Like, everybody talking about these steamy books and they don't be steamy. This is steamy, okay? This is steamy, this is short, this is quick. 2 black leads, so I highly recommend it if you want something a little smutty, you know what I'm saying? Something a little spice your Kindle life up. And that is all I have for this video. I know everybody's excited to see what my worst books are for 2022, and child, y'all gonna burn me on a stake when y'all find out some of these books, but it is what it is. I don't even think I'm gonna have a worst books. I think it's gonna be like my most disappointing books. That'll be the next video, so stay tuned for that. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books. If you've made it to the end of this video, leave a boat emoji or anything that has to do with like water in the comment section below. All of my links are also in the description. Follow me on my socials. My wish list is there as well. Christmas is coming up. Ho 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 ho. And this month for my book club, which if you don't know, I have a book club on Fable called Our Island. We're going to be reading Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan, and it starts on the 18th. So if you want to read that along with me and update me how you feel about the book as we're going along, feel free to follow my book club on Fable. Those are all the books that I have. Thank you guys so much for watching. Always remember, read a book, keep your life interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye.